Right, welcome ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be returning to Arrakis. Denis Villeneuve's Dune 3 has got its official title. It will also be shot with Imax cameras. And they have effectively begun filming. So this is presumably actually going to be the conclusion of these movies. At the very least, this was what Denis Villeneuve set out to do. He wanted to do the 3 movies. I am, pretty impressed, pretty happy that he got to do all of these. I'm really glad that Legendary, the production company behind this, because obviously it's a joint production between Legendary and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers put up like 25% of the budget and deal with distribution, but Legendary handles it pretty much wholesale. I'm really glad they took a punt on this and it was successful. Mainly because I quite like Legendary. I like what they do. I like the cut of their jib. They do interesting bits and pieces. Not all hits, obviously, but there's a lot of positive stuff that they put out. So anyway, thought we'd dive into this. Hit subscribe if you're new here. Turn the bell notifications on. And as it says here, this is on Variety. It says, what's in a name? Denis Villeneuve's upcoming return to Arrakis is officially titled the incredibly creative Dune Part 3. Good times. Now it says here, reports had called the film Dune Messiah, which is a nod to the 1969 book from Frank Herbert that the film will adapt as its storyline. Now that is true. Yeah, people were calling it Dune Messiah because it makes sense. And I don't think people were calling it Dune Messiah from a perspective of, yeah, this absolutely called this. No. People were like, yeah, they're going to be adapting Dune Messiah. So, yeah, it's called Dune Part 3. Sure, whatever. It's fine. You know, it follows the naming convention of the last films. I don't particularly think, the naming convention of the last films is great. But I can't begrudge them for just following it and sticking true to the established convention that they've already set up. Now, that says... Well, anyway, continues further. This will follow Paul Muad'Dib Atreides as he takes over as Emperor on Rentrak. The film is listed as Dune Part 3. The film will also include sequences shot with IMAX cameras. However, Dune Part 3 will not be entirely shot with IMAX cameras, which is following in the footsteps of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which is the first and so far only film to be produced that way. So that's interesting. I think that's a surprising way to go. Sure, I mean, Christopher Nolan's films always look good. Denis Villeneuve's films always look good. I have no reason to doubt that this will look good. Anyway, in an interview on CNBC, IMAX CEO Richard Gelfond seemed to suggest that the next Dune would be filmed entirely with the company's proprietary cameras, but it appears he misspoke. During the end of the interview, Gelfond was asked about Villeneuve's being hired by Amazon MGM Studios to direct their reboot of the James Bond franchise. And the executive's response also touched on the director's plans for Dune Part 3 at Warner Brothers and Legendary Entertainment, which will film before the James Bond revival. And he said the following, quote, "From a personal point of view, I was really happy. I like him. I think he's a genius filmmaker. He's so creative. He's making the next Dune with IMAX cameras. He's filming the whole thing. So we haven't started talking yet, but I'm praying that that's the case with Bond." Now, I would imagine it could be in part to save money, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know what the benefit would be just to shoot in part with IMAX. Aside from a monetary saving. So a spokesperson for Legendary did not respond to requests for comment. Okay, that's fine. No, it doesn't really matter. Gelfond also touched on IMAX's success through the year's summer blockbuster season, citing that F1 earned 23% of its opening weekend grosses in IMAX. Meanwhile, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, did 20% in IMAX in its first 2 weeks. Think of 20% of the box office when we're less than 1% of the screens. The public is really demanding it. Yeah, people like IMAX because it is categorically one of the better ways to watch a film. Not necessarily the best way to watch a film. I'm sure there are other luxurious premium screens that you could watch on. There's like Dolby Atmos, isn't there, or 4DX and all this other kind of nonsense. But I personally quite like IMAX. I like IMAX. I won't necessarily always choose it though, and I'm not alone in that, obviously. So filming on Dune Part 3 is set to begin imminently, with Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya reprising their roles. Jason Momoa has also confirmed he will return for Part 3, after featuring in the first Dune but not appearing in Part 2. Last year, Villeneuve spoke about the film and said the next Dune installment will not be the completion of a trilogy in his eyes, which I think is interesting. I mean, it kind of is, though, but kind of isn't. So he said, first, it's important that people understand that for me, it was really a diptych. Villeneuve said of the first 2 Dune movies, it was really a pair of movies that will be the adaptation of the first book. That's done, and that's finished. If I do a third one, which is in the writing process, it's not like a trilogy. It's strange to say that, but if I go back there, let's do something that feels different and has its own identity. So, I mean, it is a trilogy, but it's also kind of not, because the first book was split into 2. So, meh, whatever. It's an interesting way to approach it, and I think this is an interesting way of wording it. If I go back there, let's do something that feels different and has its own identity. Yeah, I mean, you can do that with the... You can do that. Like, you are progressing the world forward in such a way where things can now adjust and move, and characters can really go through arcs that separate them from previous iterations or previous depictions that we'd seen in the other movies. In a recent interview with Variety, Bruce Marcoux, Senior Vice President and Head of Post-Production at IMAX, explained what a movie being shot with IMAX means for audiences and filmmakers, which I think is important to say, so we'll go through this. He says, those movies that were shot with our film cameras receive that kind of nomenclature. Those are different than the filmed for IMAX movies, which are all shot with digital cameras. However, a lot of the same kind of processes take place in the making of the movie when they're shooting with our film cameras. Those movies still do a lot of testing and reviews, and filmmakers work very closely with us throughout the entire production, since it's our camera on set, whereas the filmed for IMAX program is using certified digital cameras that are not necessarily unique to us. So it's proprietary equipment, effectively, which I think is the reason why they're only filming in part on IMAX, or in part with IMAX, because it's about money at the end of the day. And I think that they do need to reduce the budget a little bit for this film, which I think is perfectly fair, perfectly reasonable. It's also an astute business move. Like, that's just smart. So anyway, there you go. What do you guys think? Are you excited for this? I'm keen to see what they do with Cheney now, because they've kind of on the precipice of ruining her character. It'll be interesting, because they completely changed the character from the book. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with her, and where they go with it. But anyway, leave your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye now.